All right, hello and welcome to everyone. Today our guest is MMA fighter Cody Gibson. I'm always pleased to have a conversation also with a former UFC name and with a man who achieved so much in the world of mixed martial arts. What can you say in general about yourself, your achievements, your career? How did it go? Do you have some future plans? And how are you feeling considering that you just competed at LFA?
I'm feeling pretty good. It's been a long layoff that I wasn't wanting, but I had two surgeries in 2019, unfortunately, and then COVID hit in 2020. So I'm excited to get back in there and resume my career.
That is really outstanding. When did you start training MMA and which was your first martial art?
I started training mixed martial arts, I'd say in 2006, 2007. I came from a wrestling background, and I started training and taking fights in the summertime. I was wrestling in college, and so I would go away to school and wrestle and go to school for the year, and then I would come back to my hometown in the summer and started training with some friends that were at a local gym, and pretty quickly took my first few fights and pretty much just fought every summer while I was in college. My first 3 or 4 mixed martial arts fights. Pretty limited training, just doing some jiu-jitsu and kickboxing classes, but didn't really know what I was getting myself into when I first started.
Do you have a nickname?
Yeah, the Renegade.
What is the background of it?
When I was in college, we had a little running joke kind of club of renegades, and all we were just hooligans. We didn't really fit into the status quo, and we kind of did things our own way, and we were just dumb and immature, but the nickname stuck. And I like to think of myself like that. Like I can't really be painted in any like particular way, or cast into any particular box. I kind of do things and see things as an individual, and I think that above everything else, that's what a renegade is.
How would you describe your fighting style?
I would describe my fighting style as I'm a pressure fighter, high volume. Uh, Boxing and wrestling are my two primary kind of tactics. So I throw a lot of volume. I keep a high pace. I try to wear you down and drown you. And I put a lot of pressure moving forward.
Who are your coaches and sparring partners?
Last year, I moved from Central California to the Central Coast. So now I live in the central part of California still, but on the coast. And I train at the Pit with legendary John Hackelman. And my head coach is probably obviously John, but also Antonio Benuelos, who is a veteran of the WEC, UFC, and Dream. He's more my size. He was a 125 and 135 pounder. And he's kind of taken over a lot of the head coaching duties. As John, we still work with John as well, but Antonio kind of does a lot of our day-to-day stuff. And there's a lot of young guys. It's a small team. It's not like a TriStar or a Jackson Winks where there's 500 fighters, but it's a small, tight-knit team, and there's quite a few young guys in their early 20s who are kind of wrapping up their amateur careers and have had successful amateur careers or just turned pro and have a couple of pro fights. So I think that we got a couple guys that in the next few years you'll be hearing about.
Do you have the favorite strike and the favorite submission?
Probably I like uppercuts a lot. I like slipping punches to uppercuts. Um, that's probably my favorite punch, and it's just one of those punches when you can land it clean. It sets up the right hand. If it's a left uppercut, um, or a left hook if it's a right uppercut. Um, my favorite submission is probably anything to do with the neck. I, I really like Darce chokes and anaconda chokes. I'm a pretty long fighter, so if I can get my arms around your neck, I feel pretty good about that.
Do you still remember your first professional fight and how did it look? I think you won your first professional fight, right?
Yeah, I took my first professional fight in the summer of I think the end of my freshman year of college, and like I said, I had pretty limited training other than wrestling. Um, luckily for me, the guy I was fighting had about 20 fights, 15 to 20 fights, but he had a pretty bad record. Um, so I almost feel like that was better because as opposed to fighting someone who was 0-0 like myself and had, I kind of that fear of the unknown, I knew that the guy wasn't very good. So it kind of eased the nerves a little bit that I knew I was going to be fighting someone who's tried and failed at this quite a few times. I think it was like 3-15 or something like that. It was pretty bad. So I was really nervous. I really didn't know how to throw a punch. I didn't know much about jiu-jitsu. I was pretty much a wrestler, so my strategy was to get the guy on the ground as fast as I could and hope I could punch him and not get submitted. And luckily, that's pretty much the way it went.
Which is the hardest weight cut of your career?
The toughest weight cut, it was definitely my UFC debut. I took the fight on 10 days notice, and I fought the current champion, Aljamain Sterling. It was both of our debuts. And I'm a pretty big bantamweight. I walk around about 160 to 165 pounds, and I cut to 135. And that's kind of my walk around weight. And so it was about 30 pounds in 10 days. So it was not fun.
I understand you definitely. Which is the best promotion you fought outside of UFC? So no UFC, all other promotions. Which is the best for you and why?
I spent a lot of my career at the Tachi Palace, which is kind of has a storied history. It's where the WEC actually started. And a lot of, the Diaz brothers have both fought out of there, Uriah Faber. But probably my favorite promotion that I fought for was Nick Diaz's. Nick Diaz put on a show in Stockton years ago. He tried his hand at being a promoter. It was called War MMA, and it was at the Stockton Event Center, or whatever it was called. And I actually fought one of his guys. So I fought a brown belt under Cesar Gracie. So the whole place was booing me, which was kind of fun.
Do you remember your first professional loss?
I do. I fought a guy who was a lot bigger than me, named David Bolea, and he was primarily just a grappler. He really had very little stand-up, and he was out of Las Vegas. I can't remember what belt he was when I fought him, but the fight was going really well. I had kind of beaten him up a little bit on the feet and taken him down. I believe it was at 155s. And he was big. He was 6'1" or so, and he was a pretty big guy. And I ended up in side control. It was the second round, I believe. I was in side control. Everything was kind of going according to plan, and he hit this like really crazy submission, and I didn't. He trapped my arm between his legs from side control bottom, and I looked down at my arm, and it was being inverted almost like a Kimura. It gets inverts the arm. And it was kind of just a crazy submission. And it was it was a learning experience because, everything could be going really great in the fight and you feel really good about things and it's going your way. And then all of a sudden in the span of a couple seconds, your arm's being twisted in a way that forces you to submit. So, yeah, I learned a lot from that loss.
What do you think about your Titan FC debut? Was it the first television fight, right?
For Titan FC?
Yes?
Yeah, I believe that was the first time I was ever on television. Yeah, and I was really brought into that fight to lose. I was on I think a 2-fight losing streak. I had fought a couple of tough guys at the Tachi Palace for the title, and lost. And so, actually, I think I might have just won a fight in LA, but I wasn't, I had lost a couple not too long before, and they had brought me in to fight a knockout artist who was from Kansas City area, Missouri area, but was training with the Black Zillions down in Florida. And I believe he was 8-1 at the time, and had a bunch of flashy knockouts. And so I was brought in as definitely the guy to lose to him in front of his home crowd. But I was able to use my wrestling and control where the fight took place and get the win.
That's outstanding. And about your UFC debut against Aljo, how did it go? I mean, you said you had a very much harsh weight cut and all things that go around with it, but very pleased with your performance, considering that Aljo is a now champ and that you can say that you pretty much decently fought a champ.
Yeah, I actually was surprised that I felt as good as I did in the fight, considering the weight cut and the short notice. I was worried, I might gas out. But I actually physically felt fine throughout the 3 rounds. And it was a pretty tactical fight. It was a lot of positional changes. Each of us secured takedowns. And he won the first round. I took the second round, and he was able to take the third round. So I lost 2 rounds to 1. It was pretty obvious that going into that third round, that whoever won that round was going to win the fight. So, it was a good experience. And I was actually, Aljamain reached out to me after the fight and came and stayed at my house and trained with me for a couple of weeks. So I got to know him pretty well and always root for him now.
Oh, that's awesome. How did you knock out Johnny Bedford?
That was a crazy fight. Johnny was a very animated individual who talks a lot, and
I know.
And he's always in controversy, it seems like. And he hits really hard for a bantamweight. He's probably the hardest hitting guy I've ever fought. But a lot of the times, because of his style, he leaves himself exposed to a lot of counters. And he came out right off the bat and slipped a punch and hit a body shot to the liver. I retreated and was pretty much hurt and hunched over. And he came flying in with a flying knee to try to finish the fight and had his hands down. So as soon as he threw the flying knee and I kind of just used a helmet guard to block it, I threw an overhand right, and he went crashing to the floor and, was knocked out. And then the ref kind of jumped in as I proceeded to jump on top of him. The ref threw his arm in and then took his arm out. It was a very strange stoppage. He woke up once his head bounced off the canvas, and so he protested the stoppage. So it was kind of marred in controversy, but for as long as it lasted, it was fireworks.
Yeah, true. What are your thoughts on Manuel Gamburian?
Manny was an interesting fight. I really, it was one of those, I think that it's kind of been a recurring theme in my career is, fights are going my way, and then I have a lapse in focus and get caught in bad positions. With Manny, he was coming down to 135 pounds for the first time, but I was still the bigger guy. He's a short guy, and I'm a tall guy. And I was able to. I feel like for mixed martial arts fighters, I know how to use my length better than a lot. Sometimes you see guys that are tall, and they have reach advantages, but they don't really know how to use them. And I feel like through my experience with boxing over the years that I've been able to figure out ways to use my reach advantage effectively. And that's pretty much what was happening in the Manny Gambarian fight. I was keeping him at the end of my jab and landing right hands as well. I dropped him a couple of times, and it was pretty much dominating the fight, and just kind of lost focus and ended up in a scramble. And he's always been known to have a really tight guillotine, and it got guillotined at the very end of the second round. I wasn't aware of how much time was on the clock. Apparently there was only a couple of seconds left. So it's something I've had to really stop and think about throughout my career. Is several of my losses, I believe at least 3 of them, have come in fights that I was winning, and then just kind of lost focus. So it's something I've tried to work on, and staying focused the entire 15 or 25 minutes.
Your last UFC fight was against Douglas Silva de Andrade. How did it go?
I lost a decision. I fought Douglas in Brazil, and he's a Brazilian. It was a very close fight. He was a tough guy to fight because he was very spastic. He wasn't very fluid in his movement. He's very kind of herky-jerky. And he hit really hard, but he was just hard to gauge. And I was chasing him a lot. And my footwork at the time wasn't good enough to cut him off. It was more chasing him around the cage. And I had a harder time. His takedown defense was a lot better than I anticipated as well. So I kind of got a little bit tired chasing him down and trying to take him down several times. We got into some pretty wild scrambles. And then the Brazilian heat didn't help. I was just in the warm-up in the back. I was sweating. I noticed more than usual. And so that was kind of different too. It was very hot. A lot of people thought I won the fight when it was said and done. I didn't think I won the fight when it was over. And I still don't think I won the fight. I thought I lost 2 rounds to 1. But I was definitely the one pushing forward. But it is what it is, If you, I know it's cliche, but if you allow the judges to determine the winner, anything could happen.
Yeah, you're right about that one. So you had ups and downs later, but you won one Tachi Palace bantamweight champ, right? Or 2? How many did you win?
I won the bantamweight title at the Tachi Palace.
So what can you say about that fight? I believe it was against Rolando Velasco.
Yeah, that was a crazy fight. That was a 5-rounder. Me and Rolando had a history together. We had wrestled each other twice in college. I beat him pretty decisively the first time we wrestled in college. And then the second time was the first match of my sophomore year. And I saw who I was wrestling. I was like, oh, I remember beating this kid pretty bad last year. And so I didn't take him very seriously. And he came out of the gate with something to prove and beat me the second time we wrestled. And we never wrestled again. And then I saw that he had started fighting and had quite an extensive, career as a fighter. So I knew there was a possibility, and he's from a town in Modesto, which was about 3 hours north of me. So I knew there was probably a pretty good possibility that at some point we'd end up fighting. And the stars aligned finally, and he was the champion. And so it was a tough fight, primarily a striking fight. And his striking, I thought I would have a significant advantage, but he was doing a really good job of slipping punches and coming over the top. But I kind of dug deep in that fight and had to, just throw caution to the wind and throw my hands up in the air and kind of go into that dark place. But I was able to secure the win in the end.
Are you pleased with your LFA debut, considering the fact that you had many health issues, injuries, issues, COVID slams, etc.? How are you pleased with your LFA debut in general?
I beat a good Brazilian prospect who had a really good record. I wasn't necessarily pleased with my performance. I had a very difficult camp. a lot of changes in coaches and last minute changes, and I kind of had to put that whole camp together by myself. And so I wasn't in the best headspace going into that fight. But at the end of the day, I was able to get the win. I didn't feel like it was definitely my best performance, but I can't complain about beating a guy. I think he was like 19-1 or 19-2 was his record. So, I was happy that I was able to still, get the win.
So technically, you're trying to say that you were brought to this matchup as a gatekeeper, and actually you destroyed him as a gatekeeper, right? Am I right, or I didn't say it well?
No, I think that's pretty accurate. Yeah, I was definitely brought in to fight the young prospect, and I think if LFA had their way, I would have lost. So, it's happy to get the win.
How does one day in your life look like?
I'm sorry?
How does one day in your life look like? Can you please describe one day since the moment you wake up until the moment you go to sleep, please?
Yeah, I work full time. I'm a high school teacher. So, and I'm even teaching summer school right now. So, I'm still teaching in the summer. So I get up at 5 a.m. and I go to the gym, and then I get a strength and conditioning workout in, and then I go to work. And normally I would get off about 3:30. Because it's summer school, I'm getting off a little bit earlier. I get off at 1, and I've got about a 40-minute commute to the school I work at. So I drive home and relax, rest, play with my kids. I have 2 daughters. And then depending on the day, I either go back to the gym around 3:30, or on days like today, I go in the evening time. I'll go at 6:30 and train for a couple more hours, whether it be striking, wrestling, jiu-jitsu, depending on the day. And then sometimes I have to run in the evening if I'm training for a fight. Like last night and tomorrow night, I'll be running after that next workout to get a third workout in. Tonight I just have grappling. It's a 2-hour pretty hard grappling session, so that's all I've got scheduled. And then I try to get to bed and get up and do it all over again.
What are your plans for the future?
I don't really have any, to be honest with you. Everyone, a lot of times people ask, you're trying to get back to the UFC. Of course, I would love to get back to the UFC. And I've won, all my fights at bantamweight since I left the UFC. I've got one loss at featherweight. But this would be another big win. This fight I've got coming up, and we see where we go from there. I'm just happy to be active again. It's been 2 years now, so my main objective is to go and have a good performance and finish this fight, and then stay active. Try to get another fight this year, and we'll see as we go into 2022. Whatever unfolds. But I'm open to signing with Bellator or the UFC or even another promotion. I love to go international. I've always had it in my mind that I would want to, use mixed martial arts as a vehicle to kind of see the world. So I'm open to anything.
Do you have the favorite quote?
Oh man, favorite quote. I don't know if it's my favorite quote necessarily, but I do like, and Dustin Poirier actually just posted about it, the Man in the Arena by Theodore Roosevelt. Pretty spot on for what I do, so I like that one a lot.
Do you have the favorite animal?
Animal? I don't know. I got 2 dogs. I'm a history teacher, so my dogs are Franklin Roosevelt and Winston Churchill. So maybe dogs.
Oh yeah, that sounds pretty much like a great connection. Would you like to add something, or would you like maybe to greet somebody Would you like to mention somebody or give a shout out to somebody in this interview, please?
Yeah, I think I moved over here to the Central Coast this last year, and I've just been really excited about training with the new team at the pit, and they really, welcomed me with open arms. And so I just give a shout out to the gym I train at. It's been a good year here and experience. And I've always got to give a shout out to my wife because she allows me to continue to do this. We're busy people. She's a full-time nurse, and I'm a full-time teacher, and she lets me spend a lot of my free time training. So shout out to her as well.
Thank you for this amazing interview. I will now start creating video. When it gets finished, I will post tomorrow. It will be released for sure.
All right, cool. Nice to meet you. Thank you.
Right,
where are you at, by the way?
Yeah?
Where are you from?
I'm from Bulgaria.
Bulgaria. Is that where you live?
Ivanov. Blagoy Ivanov.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, I'll have to visit your country someday.
Well, you are always welcome to come, man.
Yeah. Right on. Nice to meet you, man.
Thank
Take
you
care.
so much. Have a great day.
You too.